All right. So the next topic here is charting worksheet data in Microsoft Excel. And so once you have data, how are you going to use that data? How are you going to visualize it? And a spreadsheet filled with cells of numbers can be very hard to visualize. So it is useful to try to create an image which conveys some message, some meaning, some summarized information through some sort of chart. And there are many different types of charts. And I know when I was in college, I took a whole course in the art of charting. And there's a lot to it. When do you use a line graph versus a pie chart or something like that? A bar graph versus a column graph or chart? Um, and how do you make it work? How do you give information that is meaningful to the user from a scientific standpoint? You can also use that type of information to obfuscate or make it harder to see the information if you want. And that's done all the time in politics and manipulating people's opinions. You can use charts that look one way when the reality is very, very different depending on how you make the chart look. So the purpose of a chart is supposed to be to inform people, not to mislead them. But used in the wrong hands or intentionally with the wrong intent, charts are very powerful tools to give information or misinformation. And so we have to know how to handle that. How do we know how to make the chart different sizes? How do we modify its format? And how do we get it ready for printing if that is our goal? Lots of information on how charts can be put together. And there are different layouts and styles. And I would consider a lot of this to be intermediate level Excel usage. But some of the basics, you should be able to at least create a basic chart to show the information. So charts are linked to the data upon which they are based. So if I have a chart like this, the sales by quarter, and there are 4 different individuals, it appears, in this sales group based on whatever their accounts are. And it's up to the company to judge what these numbers really mean. Just because you have a big number, well, maybe one of your customers is Walmart. And it's unfair to say, all right, you've got these massive numbers compared to somebody else. So you need to know the other kinds of information. Some salespeople working with smaller clients might actually have a harder job to make less money than somebody who's dealing with a very consistent, regular, big account. That's kind of easy to deal with in some cases. Not saying Walmart's easy. Everybody I know deals with a Walmart account. They get the money, they pay, they're paid, they earn every penny of it. Walmart's hard to work with. But you have to have data, and it has to be displayed in a way that's meaningful to the people who are using that data. So there are 2 ways, 2 locations you can choose for a chart. You can either embed it in a worksheet with the data, or you can create a separate chart sheet on a separate tab in Excel. If you create a chart and then tap F11, the chart will be placed on its own chart sheet. So that's a shortcut in Excel. I can't say that yours will necessarily do that. So you have to first select the data that you are going to use for the chart. So here are the people involved in this particular chart and their sales totals. Here they're going to make a pie chart, and then they are going to then display that in some fashion. So in order to select things that are not right next to each other, you would use the control key. So select A4 through A8 and then hit Control and select F4 through F8. Now you'll notice that A4 is blank, doesn't have a title, and that's okay. I don't need the title. The title is just a header, and it would just be salesperson's name or whatever in this chart. And I could use that to label the key. But do I need that to know what's going on? I can pretty much see that these are people's names that are the total sales by quarter for each team member, or total sales for all quarters, actually. All right. And there are 10 major chart types each, and that might change versus the different versions of Excel. I'm not going to ask you how many chart types are there in Excel. There are lots of ways to pull up this information, and it might look different on the version you have or if you're not using Excel. So don't worry about the categories of types, but you can see here in this illustration or this screenshot that there are column charts, which are vertical bars. There are line charts, which literally is a line, pie charts, bar charts, which is a horizontal bar. So a column chart and a bar chart are the same thing, just 90 degrees from each other. Column chart, bar chart. Area charts, XY grid, stock, surface, again, different types that you might choose. And then once you choose a category, then there's all kinds of other options. Depending on what you select, there's different titles. There's the main chart title. There's the axis titles. And all of that information can be displayed depending on how you're setting up the chart. And there's a lot of control over this, and it takes practice. The chart tools appear on a contextual tab of the ribbon when you are selecting a chart. So there is no chart tools. So if I go to Excel, for example, I just created something in Excel to play with, and I look at my ribbon, there's nothing here called chart tools. But if I create a chart, a new context sensitive, meaning it's sensitive to what I'm doing at the time, a new ribbon group will show up. Chart tools. And it shows up because I am working on a chart. Okay? Embedded charts are embedded into the same sheet as the data, and you can move them around the sheet. And that's really handy for charts that you plan on using just visually. You want to see the information. You aren't necessarily worried about the chart becoming a slide in a presentation, a more formal view of it. If I'm making something for a slide in a presentation or something that I want to look more formal, I'll create a new sheet, a new tab with just the chart all by itself. Charts can exist in their own sheets, like I just said, and these are chart sheets. It's just another tab that doesn't have cells anymore. It doesn't have columns and rows. It just has your chart, and the chart is based on data on another tab, another sheet. You can right-click on the chart area and choose moving the chart, so you can move it to a different location on another sheet, or you can move it back to the original sheet from where the data is. So line charts are example of this, a sales trend chart. And so here we're looking at Q1, Q2, Q3. What's the trend in the sales? And a line shows you how it goes up and down very, very easily. I could also have used a column chart. That would have been another way to look at this data. And whether you choose a line or a column depends on what you think gives the best view to tell the story or give the information you want. In some cases, it's a toss-up. And I would think something this simple, a column chart, or a line chart kind of give the same information and aren't that different. Although when we're talking about data, a lot of people like that stock market look of a line chart. So this is something that somebody might choose. A pie chart, you take a whole and you divide the whole into a pie. So whatever the total is for the sales of all those team members, and you look at that not by quarter, but by team member. How well did Talos do versus Leisa? And it appears that Leisa, this burgundy color wedge, is clearly the smallest piece of the pie. And does that mean she's not as good a salesperson as the other team members? No, that's not what it necessarily means at all. But it might be important information for the sales team to make some decisions. Maybe Lisa's doing exactly what she's supposed to be doing on some very difficult small accounts, and that's a very important piece of the pie. Maybe Lisa has the same kinds of account people as Amy over here in purple. And Lisa has to step it up a little bit. What's going on? Why is she not getting the sales? So again, without all of the information, we can't make decisions on what this chart actually means. But either way, the chart is visually very compelling. I can look at this chart and see very quickly some general trends where it looks like 3 people have very strong numbers and 1 person has a very small wedge of the pie. But a pie chart, unless there are dramatic differences, hides some of the information. If I didn't have the raw data on this pie chart, if I omitted the numbers, could I tell that Talos was the number 1 with 122,000? Versus Brian with 96,000. All 3 of those larger wedges look kind of the same size. So if you're just trying to look at some general ideas, pie charts can be very, very important, especially to show the ones that are biggest and smallest if you don't want to look at the real detail. If you want to look at the detail, pie charts sometimes don't give you all of the information as obviously, and a column chart might be a better way to go. You might try both of them and make a decision. Which one works for me? So any chart you can modify once you've created it. You can change the fonts, you can change the font size and color, you can change where the title is, you can change the number formatting so it has 2 decimal places, 0 decimal places, whether it's just in the thousands, so 22 literally means 22,000, so you can get rid of a bunch of zeros. You can change the background color if you would like, or just leave it as white. You can add or remove legends. So in this case of the pie chart, here is the legend telling the people's names. In the case of this one, there is no legend. There's no reason for a legend. But in the previous chart, yeah, all of these others are legends or names. Anyway, there's lots of ways to change chart information. Selecting the chart whose type you want to change. So first you have to select the chart and then click on Change the Chart Type button on the Design tab and select a new chart type. Click OK. All right, so at this point I would like to take a brief break and I'll come right back with some data and some examples of how to actually do this. Let me show you. All right, so I'll be right back.